And it's always a cat and mouse game.
Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I found myself in this situation. Let me explain. Recently, around the middle of February, I went with Jakub Mrugalski to Strasbourg, specifically to the European Parliament. Alongside other creators from Europe, we were invited as anti-misinformation specialists to a meeting about security and defense within the European Union. To be fully transparent, I'm marking this episode as sponsored, maybe even a bit overzealously, but I would rather dispel any doubts. Sure, our flights and accommodation were covered, but it's hard to talk about a transaction happening when nothing was really asked for in return. They just wanted to hear the specialist's perspective. I mean, I had to take a leave from work to go there, so if you want to get technical, I actually lost money on this. Okay, but I'm not here to host a pity party. Let's get to it. Let's go! Misinformation is steadily becoming a more impactful and clearly visible danger. In recent years, we've been encountering it daily when it comes to various vaccines, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, or the fight against 5G led by the tinfoil hat vanguard. But not every misinformation is the same. Oh no. One of its types is FIMI, or Foreign Information Manipulation and Interference. FIMI is an umbrella term encompassing a certain pattern of behaviors or methods used to subvert democratic values in nations. How? For example, by increasing polarization in societies or attempting to create divides within communities. This, in turn, leads directly to the weakening of the whole union on the international stage. But not every case of FIMI will be misinformation, nor every misinformation case will be FIMI. This very definition, and the EU loves its definitions, serves as the basis for the attempts to fight against such activities. The fight against FIMI is quickly ascending in the EU's priority ladder, and the top-mentioned danger sources are Russia, Belarus, and China. Although, of course, it's not the only vector. Currently, we are observing the biggest misinformation danger coming from troll farms from China, Belarus, and of course, Russia. Such campaigns are conducted mainly in social media, but not only. Special websites pretending to be reputable information sources are being created, or think tanks secretly financed via foreign capital whose goal is to divide society.
I was examining a couple of years ago the Chinese LinkedIn-based spy recruitment campaign that was in different countries in Europe and in the US as well. But that was kind of a manual hard work that they actually invented, kind of a fake think tanks, and asked people to write essays based on non-public information.
Because the pro-Kremlin propaganda is being sown very efficiently. The few remaining Russian diplomats in the West, Moscow-backed media, or thousands of accounts controlled from the Ural Mountains, they all speak with a fairly consistent voice. Bot farms and other trolls are used to sow as far as possible. The websites of politicians, political parties, and media are getting cloned, or new ones are created for them from scratch. Private data is stolen, such as emails, so that it can be published depending on the situation to maximize the amount of drama produced. Apart from trying to block such content, there is pretty much nothing else to do. Besides, the target of such misinformation campaigns isn't just the EU. We are not that special. Our close and distant neighbors, especially those with whom we are engaged in intense trade agreements or friendly politics, are being attacked too. It's just happening differently. For example, Europe is portrayed there only from its bad side, so that citizens are compelled to pressure their governments to break relations, or at least limit them. The most popular targets are the weakest ones, such as minorities, ethnic, racial, sexual. Hate is being proliferated to divide society, which in turn makes it much easier to destabilize. Where in Europe did this sudden urge to fight come from? Well, we can see, and in living color, how often democratic elections are being influenced.
Right now we're discussing the Romanian election, Romanian presidential election, and TikTok and the way they act, and the EU Commission is looking into whether that was a violation of the DSA, what happened there. Did they take enough responsibility? Did they treat the candidates rightly? Did they do enough to avoid foreign interference?
Unfortunately, the EU itself can't do anything. It only creates frameworks and certain amenities. The actual fight is in the hands of member countries. How does the European Union want to fight with FIMI? Well, it does so in its own way, one we've got to know quite well over the decades, by making laws, regulations, and structures. We can laugh at it, but you have to start somewhere. The next step is creating tools. In this case, we got some good news. First of all, there are resources available.
It is thanks to the Parliament that we have the resources to put in place human resources and data centers so that we can look at those manipulations and also frame a response. And we came to the conclusion together that while, of course, there has been incidents of manipulation of information around the elections, we have not seen a major disturbance factor during the European elections. And we tend to believe that one cause of this is that we have made very public that we are ready. We are monitoring, and we're ready to respond in case of an attack.
Thus, the FIMI toolbox was made, though so far it sounds much more serious than it actually is in reality, because so far it's mostly an umbrella term built from vagueness. We're talking about surveilling Russia and China's movements and quick reactions to dangers, especially new ones. The rapid alert system is supposed to guarantee that it's a method for early warning and coordination between member countries and NATO when it comes to cybersecurity.
When we look at FIMI, there is the word foreign. So it comes from outside, a state or a non-state actor. We have a clear mandate through that what Russia is doing. We also see China's activities. And we have developed a response mechanism. We call it the FIMI toolbox. The FIMI toolbox has the following components. First, situational awareness. You need to know what's going on. So we have developed a methodology to look at those manipulations. Meaning, for example, we have uncovered what we call the doppelganger campaign, the fast hazard campaign. It is about creating bots, creating social digital platforms, multiple digital platforms that are not genuine but replicate the same kind of narrative. It is those kind of manipulation we're looking at and we can identify.
Part of this toolbox is, for example, the Digital Services Act introduced a few years ago. To cut a long story short, this law obliges VLOPs, very large online platforms such as Facebook or Twitter, to fight against harmful content, including fake news, under the threat of high financial penalties, in a way that stops them from washing their hands of it and pretending it's not their problem.
On overregulation or whatever they're saying from the United States, Mr. Vance saying and others, it's also something that I hear very often here in the EU. I don't think that the TSA is about overregulating. On the contrary, I honestly believe that the tools we use in the TSA are chosen, in a good manner, because we are saying that the platforms, they have a responsibility if there is a systemic risk towards democracy, towards public health, etc., foreign interference. And then they have to act, but we're not really telling them how to act. Of course, we have trusted flaggers and other tools, but we're not specifically saying how to act. We ask them, and they have an obligation to act. So they have a chance to do and find their ways to do it in a right manner. What I hear from the Americans is that they are thinking that we are punishing them, that we are putting, in order to avoid competition or whatever, then that they will be, that they will have to pay a lot of money, fines and things like that. But The thing is that it is very easy for platforms to avoid getting fined. They just have to comply with the rules. It's not that, honestly, it's not that difficult. But in this new geopolitical landscape we are facing now, I think there is also an interest to try to build up, a situation where it looks as if we're doing things badly in the EU against American companies. But none of our EU regulation is against American companies. They are made, DSA, the DMA, the AI Act, etc., is made to protect Europe, to protect European citizens, and to protect European markets. And if you want to make business in the EU, you have to comply with this. You're not obliged to make business in the EU, so these platforms, they could just stay out of EU if they don't want to comply. Or maybe we should look into how they do it in the United States, and we can also learn from their side on how to regulate in a less bureaucratic, less detailed way. But having said that, I don't think that's the case with DSA.
Is this regulation too strong? No, not really. But sometimes it's worth it to take a look across the pond and see how, in some cases, you can regulate in a slightly less aggressive way. The EU also supports other organizations that fight with the problem on a citizenship level. To help them, the DSA includes access to statistics data of platforms like Facebook. How do you learn about the disinformation?
Okay, so first there are NGOs here in Europe, the EU, but there's EU versus Disinfo to say, but you have Graphica in New York, and there are several reports from Twitter or YouTube or what you have, they report on disinformation. Then there's EU versus Disinfo, which is also, we have a Stratcom East and Stratcom Far East task force, which looks at China and Russian disinformation.
Okay.
They report to us. And we have, of course, services, intelligence services that report to us. And we have information from the news, the newspapers. The best thing, let me say this, the best thing is that I personally put amendments in the Digital Services Act to make sure that what we call legitimate access seekers, law enforcement, NGOs, but also academia, can actually ask Silicon Valley to provide a trove of data and do research. That not just intelligence agencies or NGOs say this is Russian disinformation, but that they can verify it themselves. So the information like what Bitcoin address or what Solana address was used to register this domain. That's information with what session cookie, browser cookie, what VPN was used, and combining that data and actually to hunt for the actors, for the threat actors. And that is my goal, to have a more democratic debate on disinformation. Not just that the intelligence services is telling this is Russians, but that people can actually verify it. This is the reason we have the Digital Services Act. It's now up to the Commission to come with a proposal on how that scheme is being implemented. That's going to come somewhere this year, I guess. But it will also benefit your work.
This allows researchers to potentially discover various anomalies faster. But not everyone is a researcher. Thus, the widely available EU versus Disinfo site was opened, where you can see analyses and examples of the kinds of fake content targeted at us.
In terms of situational awareness, we have developed what is today the largest database of disinformation narrative, manipulation narratives that you can find on your phone now. It is called EU versus Disinfo.
But this is a constant fight, because the villains keep coming up with new tricks. For example, by using AI. Generative content creation unfortunately makes the job of someone who wants to spread misinformation much easier, because it allows them to create much more of such content for a lot less, often even improving its quality.
As we used to say, disinformation is not from today, not even from the social media platform. It has always existed a long time ago. What changes are the means, and AI is another mean to disinform massively. So that's why we need to build that resilience. That's why we need to build some mechanism. And that's why we're working on this in toolbox and putting together the Open Democracy Shield, because it will, of course, be even more necessary with the use of AI in this disinformation platforms.
And here, we really don't know what to do exactly. One solution that comes to mind is to simply close the platforms which allow this kind of content.
Do we have a good tools to fight against that? I think we have some, but we don't know what to do with our future challenge. And future challenge is actually artificial intelligence.
Yep.
Now, within 5 years, 99% of all the content on the internet will be created by artificial intelligence. And the problem is that people will just stop believing on anything, on good news, trustful news.
Yep.
Probably also they will not trust out anymore to disinformation. I think this is the topic we really need to pay attention to. And I don't have a good answer because artificial intelligence is something so new here also in this building.
Right now, the quality of generated content, I also got deepfakes with my face when they were trying to scam people, is getting better. And the part that I'm missing as a citizen is like the deepfakes with my face are still there on Meta platform. And people are writing to me because they're getting scammed because they trust my face, they trust my image, and they're getting scammed. And Meta did not respond. That's the place where I'm looking at you, and I really hope for fines with DSA or the big reaction towards the very large online platforms, so they actually start doing something.
Oh, I have several fake accounts.
Really?
Yes. So I think if big platforms will not deliver solutions, because they should fight against that. If they will not deliver solutions, and I don't see that they do that for the moment, maybe we should consider even to shut down or at least threaten to shut down if I will not do that. Because look, you just can't, you control it, not we control it.
The EU also wants to be independent from Uncle Sam in the sphere of fighting against such threats. Representatives in Parliament are asking member countries to allocate funds for this goal, because the illusion of eternal peace in Europe is gone.
Europe should provide itself with the resources and the instruments capable of defending ourselves, of defending our way of life, of our principles, of our convictions, of our interests. And that's why we decided for the very first time in the report to include a clear call for all the member states and the institutions, European institutions, to mobilize enough funding for providing us with a technological and industrial base so that Europe cannot depend anymore on anybody else to defend itself. It will take time. It will not be overnight. We need to catch up because we have been for a long, long time living on the benefits of the dividends of the peace. After the implosion of the Soviet Union in December 1991, we decided that there were not going to be any war anymore in Europe, and then we disarmed ourselves. We didn't invest in defense and security, and now we have a long way to catch up.
Unfortunately, the legislative process makes all this take way too much time. One of the charms of democracy. AI from 2 years ago, 1 year ago, like few months ago, changed so much. And I have seen AI Act, I have seen some reactions, but they're like big milestones that are quite slow to iterate. Do you think we can catch up?
It's like running race. When it starts, I think the autocratic regimes runs first.
Yep.
Then some big countries like US maybe are sometimes the second or the third, and then Europe is still on the start line and discuss the strategy. How long we will run, when we do relax, what will be the pace and on. But the good news about European Union is when the strategy is done, we always reach the finish line. Maybe not the first ones, but we always do. I think the good example is our support for Ukraine. So many countries now are a little bit, shaking. European Union, even though in taking consideration there's Orban and Fico and others who don't want to support this, the ship goes the right direction. So I still haven't lost the trust to the Europe values, European Union in general. So we will find solution one day or another, maybe later than others, but we will find a solution.
What is probably obvious though, not everyone is speaking in one voice, and you can still find people trying to explain and excuse Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But what might surprise some of you, you can also find them in European Parliament, ironically, even at the meeting about misinformation.
The main threats of the evil powers in this world order, I do not believe that Russia is an enemy of Europe. Russia is Russia, and the reason for the Ukraine war, I think we will debate in some details afterwards, The main reason for the war in Ukraine is NATO expansion eastwards to Ukraine and to Georgia. This process started in 2002. It reached a climax at the Bucharest summit in 2008. And then after the Euromaidan in 2013, December and January 2014, and the regime change brought about, the whole situation escalated. So there are intelligent analysts on the international level who predicted the war and who predicted the character of the war. So we are well advised to listen to them and to their arguments to better understand the situation in which we find ourselves. Thank you.
Of course, it came with encouragement to check the sources by yourself, but it sounded more like a truly baffling request to not be a mindless sheeple. There were some bold theses as well, but fortunately, they were quickly shut down by others in the meeting.
Obviously, as a trained scientist, I'm used, of course, to be scrutinized, to check information, and the best thing you can do is care for the quality of the source. The closer the source is to high level knowledge, the better is that source. And let me give an example. What Tobias Kleber just reported about the general situation is what you can read every day in the newspapers. Recently, we spent a whole day at NATO at Brussels. And the very question whether Russia has intentions to attack a NATO state was put to the chief of intelligence of NATO, Mr. Scott Bray. And his answer was, Russia has no intention at all. We have no evidence to prove that Russia wants to attack a NATO state. That is first-hand information. What you read in the newspapers generally is being organized in a way to create a picture in your mind and to serve certain interests. We discuss that later. So go to the sources. The better the source is, the better the information.
You want to
Just like I must say. I want to remind that Russia had no intention to attack Ukraine in 22nd February from the top level of Russian government. So don't do this.
Why disinformation works is because 90% of disinformation actually is true, and only 10% is fake. And that's why people believe that this is something reliable. I think Mr. Newberg have made a good example. I also was in this meeting. And what the NATO intelligence chief said is not about that Russia don't have these intentions. He said that Putin believes he shouldn't attack NATO now, but it doesn't mean that he will not do that in the future. So he clearly has these intentions to do that. So I think this is very important that we need to deliver, reliable information. Otherwise, it looks like disinformation.
However, this points to a bigger danger. The European Union, at least on its own level, not talking about the member countries here, didn't really have tools to fight against misinformation before. The border between fighting misinformation and censorship can be very, very thin, and thus the law usually leans towards the side spreading lies. Even when pro-Kremlin media were banned, courts often considered such bans as unlawful. Then the EU tried to push this responsibility onto VLOPs and their internal regulation, but it didn't accomplish anything after all. Thus, the attempt to solve the issue from a different angle, with a law regulating outside influences.
Misinformation is verifiable false information. We have no laws against that. There is no censorship in Europe. We have disinformation. There's a concerted effort of misinformation in order to create an effect in society. Third and most powerful and aggressive form is foreign interference. And that we have laws. We have laws in the Digital Services Act saying if you are Russian or you're China and you're trying to influence our elections, there's a systemic risk on platforms, you're lost. Then we uphold the law. That's it. Then apart from that, there's a voluntary code, and the voluntary code means we make agreements with the platforms voluntarily on bulimia or anorexia promotion, on self-mutilation. We don't want that.
on social media. Those platforms have voluntarily agreed that censorship? No. But it's also about taking off Russian bots. Those are fake accounts. You can see all created by the same Bitcoin account. It has nothing to do with interaction between people. Get it off. But it's also about fact-checking. And what is fact-checking? Maybe community notes, or maybe the Twitter thing, or maybe fact-checking like Zuckerberg said. What Zuckerberg is doing, he is saying goodbye to the voluntary code. What Musk is doing is interfering with our law.
Following technological progress is really tough, especially for an institution of this magnitude. The inertias of the APT group and the EU are pretty much on the opposite ends of the spectrum. But can you somehow shorten that distance? Well, we've got an idea. It requires developing science and spending a lot of resources on it.
Do you see that we have a chance to actually, in between NATO and EU, make it easier to exchange the information and fight against it?
Well, obviously, if there's a new technology, it will be leveraged against us and it will be leveraged for us. There's every new technology, and it's always a cat and mouse game. So cat and mouse, they hunt each other. And it's also within all the legislation that we've made, we have obligations. We've tried to insert obligations for makers of AI, platforms who leverage AI to their customers to detect and actually do something about to mitigating the risk of AI. But is it sufficient? Matthijs, what do you think? Never.
There's deepfake with my face. I cannot take it down since weeks.
Exactly. Things will happen. There's no 100% security or safety. What we need to do is not make sure that we become a police state or we detect every fraud there is. We need to make sure there's a balance, that there's innovation. What I want to do is we had a hearing here in Parliament. About 90% of all academic research worldwide is
coming from China.
That's going into AI and developing language models. More than 90%, 99%. Only a couple of percentages go into the detection of deepfakes, the detection of fraud schemes and scams. We might, what we try to do here with funding, what we try to do here with making rules and laws is make sure that that portion of detection is a little bigger. So we do more to keep citizens safe. That's my mission.
Got it?
Are we there? No, never.
But do you think on that topic, we have our own DARPA, like, you know, the research? Do you think that it's possible in Europe?
Well, of course, but short answer, yes. The long answer, of course, if you look at the NIST, the National Institute for Standardization and Technology in the US, what they do extremely well is they have prize schemes. They have the most difficult questions we have in technology. They put it out to the public, they put it out to your audience, and they say, may the best win. And if you win, you get rewarded a couple of $100,000
for solving that problem.
The most difficult problems in the world in technology. You're asking very difficult questions there. What I would do with the European Commission, and I'm lobbying for it, is to have a similar scheme for Europe. Because that's an American scheme. NIST. I want a European contest to solving problems, leveraging the community, like an open source model, to not just to build software, but also solving real life problems here.
What to do and how to live. On the day of me recording this material, a third FIMI report arrived. I'm about to sit down to read it, and I recommend the same to you. You'll definitely learn a lot of useful info from it, and I hope it helps you become a harder target of propaganda and misinformation. Do you think that some of the European Union's laws should change? Let your MEP know.
If you see that there is some legislation going on regarding your topics, the most important thing for me as MEP, I received some information for you so I can do it as a proposal as MEP, because all MEPs can do that.
Okay.
So yes, let's share this information.
You believe it's pointless because he doesn't give a damn anyway? Next time, vote for someone who will listen. That's all for today, folks. Thank you for watching and see you next time.